Well, welcome to Christian Answers. This is Pastor Jeff Short, your Bible teacher and cultural analyst, and today we're going to be looking once again at the Michael Brown scandal. 20 years ago, he had conducted himself in a very unbecoming manner as far as his casual and looseness with the opposite sex. So he had been touching and doing all kinds of inappropriate things, not grossly inappropriate, but just sort of creepy and unconventional and over-the-line kind of things with a couple of women, one a younger woman and the other a middle-aged woman. And this has come back to haunt him, so to speak, 20-some years later, when the whole facts and information about these things have come out. And it has really hurt his reputation, hurt his ministry. And there was a report that was just released last month from an independent third-party investigator that said that he was guilty of some kind of misconduct, and they called it sexually abusive misconduct, which is kind of a strange phrase, and it really isn't well known, and it hasn't been used very much, but it basically tars and feathers him with the label of sexual abuse. And Dr. Brown, it looks like, has been trying to fight against that label because he doesn't feel that that is fair. And I don't feel it's fair either. I think he's guilty of misconduct, but this whole label of sexual abusive misconduct is sort of a fabricated, made-up phrase, and it connotates awful, terrible things like sexual abuse. You can go from the whole range of sexual abuse options, and it brings him into a category of predatory priests and preachers that have really involved themselves in some really bad things. Well, the thing that he involved himself in was rather minor, foolish, sophomoric things that really don't rise to the level of the label of sexual abuse. So having this report put out by the Firefly organization, a third-party independent research company, saying that he was guilty of some kind of a sexually abusive misconduct, really tries to smear him with the sexual abuse label, and yet tries to say, well, it was a sexually abusive misconduct. So the board of the Line of Fire, the ministry that Dr. Brown founded and has led for decades, the board met together and reviewed the findings of the Firefly report, and they concluded that the term sexually abusive misconduct is misleading. It goes beyond the standard definition of sexual abuse, and that he is being labeled unfairly. And I agree with that. I have been saying that all along, and you've had a lot of people on the internet and podcasters say he's been involved in sexual abuse and there are sexual abuse victims. These two women are victims, and they're trying to categorize this whole thing as if it's a sexual abuse case. And if you look at the details and the evidence of what Dr. Brown actually did, it's pretty minor stuff. It's pretty just goofy, foolish, sort of unbecoming, bad taste, not appropriate for a minister of the gospel to be touching or slapping a young woman on the rear end or letting her sit in his lap on a number of occasions. Really goofy, dumb things, but nothing that rises to the level of sexual abuse. And to have any of these women, now one of the women, the middle-aged woman, which he did involve himself in some kind of dirty talk or dirty email exchange or something, just being really dumb and stupid, and saying things that no minister should be saying with another woman that's not his wife, and so on and so forth. Just really sophomoric things. They call it sexting or pornographic conversation or something like that. And he admits that was one of the worst things he's ever done in his whole life, and he's sorry for that and everything. But that is not sexual abuse. I'm sorry, but this expanded definition of sexual abuse is what Dr. Brown and his board rejected. And I think they're justified in rejecting it. You have to be very careful when you talk about sexual abuse. You have to make sure very precisely what it means. And if you are going to incorporate every single kind of inappropriate behavior under the banner of sexual abuse, then you're going to open this whole thing up to slandering people and libel and all kinds of mischaracterizations. And that's what Dr. Brown and the board don't want to see happen, because they do say that there was misconduct unbecoming to a minister, definitely need to be rebuked. He has already suffered the embarrassment of having all of this foolish behavior that he had done 20-some years ago brought out to the light, and he's been embarrassed. He's had to not put out new content for, I think it's been around 6 months now. This is going to be something that stains his entire ministry. He's going to always have, like one of the podcasters said, an asterisk next to his name now because of this incident, this foolishness, this misconduct, misbehavior. But it is not sexual abuse. And the woman, the 20-some-year-old woman at the time, did not treat it as abuse at the time. She did not label it or characterize it as abuse. It's only later, after the Me Too movement, when people come back and say, hey, you were a victim of sexual abuse because there was someone in authority and held a position of power over you, and so that makes it abuse, and so now you're an abuse victim, and now we have to label him as a sexual abuser. No, that is wrong. That is false. That is slander. And so what Dr. Michael Brown is doing now is he's trying to clear his name and say, look, you can call me a misconduct or inappropriate or a fool or stupid for some of the things I did and said, but I'm not a sexual abuser. And he's exactly right. And I've said this all along. And I actually have, told some of these podcasters in comments and such that, hey, what they're doing is actually slandering, because they are treating Dr. Michael Brown with his sophomoric, stupid, foolish behaviors and conduct 20-some years ago. They're treating him as a full-blown sexual abuser. And they're claiming that the women were sexually abused. And they're calling this woman, who is now, I guess, in her 40s, but was part of this 20-some years ago, that she's an abuse victim. And using all of the terminology and all of the language of the Me Too movement, and just throwing all kinds of unsubstantiated claims and testimonies and evidences out there. And these podcasters, they are libeling and slandering Michael Brown. And I've always said that during this whole investigation, that they have over-exaggerated and overblown the misconduct of by Michael Brown. And this is exactly what the board has determined. Now, unfortunately, a lot of the people on this board of the Line of Fire have decided they're tired of this battle. They're tired of the pressure that is coming at them when these podcasters and the internet finds out who they are, who's on the board of the line of fire, and then start pressuring them and criticizing them for not doing it their way, and so on and so forth. And obviously, some of these people on the board of the line of fire are leaving because they're like, okay, I've had enough. I want to step down. I didn't sign up for this. I want to be on the ministry board, but if these people outside are going to continue to not let this go, and they're going to keep on fighting, I really don't know if I want to sign up for the fight. That's what they're saying. And at the same time, it says that this is the Royce report that I'm reading from here, Julie Royce and her investigators, and this is written by Rebecca Hopkins. Now, the Royce report is really good at finding evidence and bringing forth evidence. They are not as good as taking that evidence and putting it in context and perspective. So, in other words, they tend to, this is a tendency of the Royce report investigations, they tend to see everything through the Me Too movement eyes. And they also buy into a lot of the assumptions and presuppositions of the Me Too movement that came along in light of the Harvey Weinstein scandal out in Hollywood. And so they're going to believe all women. That's one of the mantras of the Me Too movement. Believe all women, whatever they say, whatever they feel. If they feel they were sexually abused or they were treated this way or that way, then it's a gospel fact because they say it. And that's one of the presuppositions of the Me Too movement. That's obviously false because you can't believe anybody all the time. You can't believe all women. You can't believe all men. You can't believe all children. You can't believe all senior citizens. It's just ridiculous to say that sin and its effect do not affect women in the sense of telling the truth or lying. Because people lie, who are men, who are women, who are children, of all ethnicities. Lying is a universal sin, and we shouldn't give anyone a free pass and say, well, we have to believe this person all the time because this person's a woman, and we have to believe all women. No, it makes no sense. But there is a tendency on the Royce report to, believe all women, just like the Me Too movement says. And also classify any woman who claims victimhood status as a victim. So all you have to do is claim that you're a victim, and you are a victim in the eyes of the Me Too movement. And unfortunately, the Royce report pretty much follows that same methodology. So what has happened is that you have a number of podcasters on the internet who are just running with this sexual abuse narrative that they're foisting upon this whole situation. They're trying to force fit the sexual abuse, clergy sexual abuse paradigm on Dr. Michael Brown and what he did 20-some years ago in his loose and casual and foolish, sophomoric kind of behavior. They're trying to make that into a sexual abuse, and they're trying to make him step down from his ministry, and they're basically trying to take him out. And so what Michael Brown has done now is his board has cleared him to return to full-time ministry, even though he was involved 20-some years ago in some kind of misconduct. And he has apologized for that. He has repented of that, and he has tried to say, I'm sorry. And the report showed that none of that continued after that incident some 20 years ago. So the board has said, yeah, what he did was bad. He repented of it, but it doesn't rise to the level of removal from ministry for the rest of his life. It didn't rise to that level. It was not sexual abuse. And so they cleared him. But some of these podcasters are not happy. They are not satisfied because they're locked into this Me Too movement, believe all women. He is guilty of sexual abuse, and he is guilty of making this younger woman, who at the time was 20 or so, she was an abuse victim. And so they have to lock in on that paradigm. And so they're going to keep beating that drum. And what happened next was that this past week, it says, the Reuters report, Brown's ministry fired off several legal demands to detractors who have commented or reported on various allegations about the organization. On Tuesday, attorney Barry Arrington sent Cantor, that is one of the critics of Brown, a demand and cease and desist letter, a copy of which Cantor's attorney Richard Town provided TRR. The letter focused on comments Cantor made in a witness report about how Brown failed to warn a missions organization about an alleged predator. Okay, so they're just really scouring anything that they can find to bring Michael down because they want Michael Brown out of ministry, and they will accept nothing short of that because they have locked in to this understanding that Brown is a sexual abuser and he's a sexual predator. And so they're going to take every shred of any connection he has, past or future, or present, with any person who has been guilty of any sexual abuse or any ministry that he's connected with or any person that he knows or any. They're gonna expand this whole thing to get their end goal, which is basically to knock Michael Brown out of his ministry. They want him to leave in disgrace because of what they feel is this expanded definition of sexual abuse. So they're out to get him. That's no question. So Michael Brown has sent a cease and desist letter to some of these individuals. In 2008, Brown's Fire School of Ministry removed volunteer mentor Keith Lashbrook from inappropriate behavior with a young woman, but failed to warn Lashbrook's mission organization, Globe, which oversaw a Haitian orphanage Lashbrook ran. 2 years later, recently adopted children from Lashbrook's orphanage began telling their new American parents that Lashbrook and his staff had abused them. Along with 3 former fire leaders, Cantor recently signed a bombshell report that included 25 witnesses, testimony, and documentation about sexual and spiritual abuse, some of which was not included in the fire. So again, they're using that phraseology, sexual and spiritual abuse. So again, what are the very precise definitions of sexual abuse? What is the very precise definition of spiritual abuse? And what are your specific accusations? Because that's what it really gets down to. You have to define your terms in this area. If you start throwing these terms around loosely, you can basically slander anyone. The demand letter gives Cantor 2 weeks to respond. Town told TRR that he plans to send a response likely next week. Okay, so Brown is saying, look, okay, if you're going to keep talking about this and trying to categorize me as a sexual abuser or predator, then I'm going to send a cease and desist order, and we're going to have to go big time with this because you are slandering. And I told these people who were greatly exaggerating what this misconduct was and expanding it into sexual predator, sexual abuse, sexual this, that, making it into like a Harvey Weinstein thing. I said, you are slandering Dr. Michael Brown. Now, I have never met Michael Brown. I don't know him. I've never talked to him. I've never emailed him. I've never appeared any place with him. He doesn't know me. I don't know him. So I don't have any dog in this hunt. But just observing from the outside, he is not guilty of sexual abuse. He is guilty of gross misconduct and just stupid, foolish behavior that grown ministers should know is not appropriate and cross the line. But he did not sexually abuse anyone, as far as the evidence is concerned. And these people that keep talking about him as guilty of sexual abuse, they are slandering him. There's no question. And I believe if this goes to court, Now, again, you don't want to see this happen with Christians. Christians should not be taking other Christians to court. But then again, Christians should not be slandering other Christians. So you have two wrongs here, in the sense that this group opposed to Dr. Brown is getting away with slander and libel and tarnishing his reputation further than it already is. They're trying to make it into something worse than it already is. And Dr. Brown, he hasn't sued them yet, so he hasn't violated Paul's admonition to fellow Christians not to sue, but he has sent a cease and desist letter, which is something that, well, what would happen if they don't? Then he has to decide whether he wants to go ahead and take legal action, which would be, in my opinion, would be a violation of Scripture. But hopefully he wants to warn them and say, look, you are acting wrong here. Let's see. As our standard practice, we review and evaluate the assertions in the letter and craft an appropriate response. After Brown learned of child abuse allegations at the orphanage, he also allegedly encouraged families not to take legal action or publicize their concerns and to trust Globe. The sad thing about this situation is that the mothers of the Haitian children, these mothers say that the reason Mike Brown did not want them to sue Globe is because it's not what Christians do. Yet he's willing to sue somebody over information regarding the Haiti situation. Well, it doesn't say that he's willing to sue. He sent the cease and desist letter. That's not suing. That's taking legal action. The suing would be if they don't respond, and so he then goes forward with a lawsuit. That would be questionable if it got to that point. Brown's attorney, Arrington, was the attorney who represented families of victims of the 1999 mass shooting of Columbine High School in a lawsuit against the gunman's parents. Arrington is now chief legal counsel for the National Association for Gun Rights. Blaze and Christina Foray, who YouTubers with a show Wake Up and Win, published an episode called Michael Brown Fired a Predator, then let him run an orphanage in Haiti. Brown's attorneys sent them similar cease and desist and demand letter for retraction. The letter gives the Forays, who are also represented by Town, 2 weeks to respond. Town told TRR he has also provided a response to the Forays' letter. Okay, I wrote a comment to this couple and said, look, you are taking the evidence of his misconduct and turning it into, in your eyes, sexual abuse. And you're talking in terms of sexual abuse. And you're talking in terms of that Michael Brown is a predator. And you're talking in terms of you are expanding unwarranted and unjustified his misconduct into full-blown abuse, and that is libel. I warned them months ago, and I warned some other podcasters, because just observing these things, it's not fair to do that. Arrington also sent Canadian journalist Lori Lynn Taylor Thompson a cease and desist letter with a demand for retraction on her reporting in her episode Two Predators on the Loose after Dr. Brown, Michael Brown and Global Mission Cover-Up. The letter also gives her 2 weeks to respond. So, it looks like Line of Fire and Dr. Michael Brown are saying to these people, stop smearing his reputation and stop going beyond what the evidence suggests and stop claiming that he's an abuser. The letter also includes a statement from Brown. Claiming to speak for victims does not confer a license to lie, Brown states in the letter to TRR. The accusations made by certain persons about covering or abating child sexual abuse in Haiti are vile and false, causing irreparable harm to many. These are especially horrific charges that have been repeated without regard for facts in something like a mob mentality. That is exactly true. It's all being done on the internet, You don't have to vet the witnesses. You don't have to cross-examine them. You just let them say whatever they want to say. And then after they say it, then you draw your own conclusions. And these podcasters are just I said it from the beginning. They're slandering Michael Brown. If those behind these baseless accusations wish to retract them and apologize, there is a way forward. If not, a truth sorting process is needed to demonstrate both the falsity of their comments and the harm they have caused. This is not about silencing anyone, but rather bringing truth where people think they can spew any kind of nonsense without consequences. That's right. There was another podcaster during the whole investigation that was saying that Michael Brown intended to meet up with the middle-aged woman to have some kind of a sexual adulterous affair. Again, that is not what the evidence concludes, that he was intending to meet with her for the purpose of committing acts of immorality. No. But this podcaster just puts that out there and accuses Michael Brown of that. It's one example. There are many, many examples of these people who comment on this whole thing. And they put this out, and thousands and hundreds of thousands of people input this internet chatter and commentary. And good for Michael Brown. I mean, his reputation is probably never going to recover because of the foolish conduct he did back 20 years ago by being too loose and casual with these women. And that is his crime. There's no question about it. He's not a sexual abuser. The facts don't show that. And now they're trying to take him down for all kinds of other things that they claim he is responsible for. But again, just making assertions and taking evidence from here and there and putting it all together and saying, okay, see, this makes him sexual abuser and a perpetrator and predator and all kinds of, it's just defamatory. And what I warned a lot of these different podcasters when I would write comments, I would say, look, you guys are defaming him. He has legal rights to hold you accountable for the words that you put out in your podcast. And if you don't stop that, you're going to be guilty of libel and slander, and you're probably going to get sued. Again, I'm not saying that Michael Brown should sue them, because we do have the scripture that the Apostle Paul says it's better to be slandered and libeled than to take a fellow Christian to court, which is a terrible witness to the world that Christians can't even get along and resolve their problems. So I don't think he should ever sue them, but I think telling them, hey, this is serious stuff you're doing, stop it, is totally appropriate. Hope that's been a helpful commentary, but we'll see you next week on another program. God bless.